Hello everybody, can you hear me? Great, Anna, super. Nikita, okay. Angelique. So, just a test. What countries do we have today? And please also, all of you, let me know if you can hear us loud and clear. Valentin, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great, super, great. Yona, can you hear us now? Great. So, you see, everything is back on track. So, 2-3 more minutes, guys, and then we start. We start at, let's say, 11:10. And we have the chance of having Valentin with us to tell us a little bit more about the daylighting and how to reach the good daylight comfort. In case there are some interferences, this is due to the noise, so we'll try to figure it out how it works also. But nevertheless, you will have the opportunity of finding this presentation on the website, on a YouTube channel after the end of this seminar. It's better now, the background noise? Now, background noise is better now?
I think yes.
Okay, I think we can.
Let me know when you want to start.
I think we can start. So, hello everybody, welcome to this new session of online trainings. This will be treating with the daylighting issues, basically how to reach an optimum level of daylight comfort, and this will help you for the development of your task. We are lucky enough because we have a specialist with us, Emmanuel Valentin. He is working for our glass division, and he will be the one taking you through the specification of the daylighting. I will be also online, but I will just cut my microphone to ensure the best quality of the sound. If you have any questions, you can you can put them in writing in the chat, and then we will that would be all from my side. Emmanuel, the mic is yours.
Okay, thank you. So hello everybody, my name is Emmanuel Valentin. As Gabriel said, I'm working for Saint-Gobain Glass. I'm a product manager, I would say residential segment. So this short presentation will just show you what is exactly daylighting, how is it defined, and how can we characterize and how can we better design a building with a good level of daylighting. So first, a short introduction. Humans are very like the natural daylight, but in any case we are spending more and more time inside. So we can say that maybe our today life is we are spending maybe between, I would say, 80 and 90% inside. So this is why it is very important to keep this natural light, because this natural light is setting a lot of things in the human way to work, let's say. The first point is how can we set the circadian cycle, and the fact that we have to be synchronized, let's say, with this kind of rhythm coming from the sun. If we have a bad synchronization, there is more and more studies which are showing that a bad synchronization with the circadian cycle, meaning that we do not have a good synchronization with the daylight cycle, you can have a lot of disease. Typically, they are demonstrated cardiovascular disorder. The brain effects are also demonstrated mainly by sleep loss. There is also other disease, maybe less demonstrated, but you have to keep in mind that this natural light is something very important for the human. So in terms of demonstration, there is also a demonstration of benefit during our real life, mainly in school, mainly in hospital or healthcare building, and mainly in offices. In offices, there is more and more demonstration, for example, that a good level of daylight can have a positive impact on, let's say, the productivity and also the management of the stress. Of course, everybody knows as well that a good level of daylight is also something which become more and more important as the building are more and more insulated. On this graph, you can see that in the whole building, which are typically on this area, on the left on the graph, the heating energy needed to heat the building is important. And more you are going on the right, meaning you are going on a future building, the need for heating will be less and less because the buildings are more and more insulated. And like this, the ratio of energy to have a good level of lighting inside the building will be almost at the same level of the other energy need, meaning for heating, for hot water. So in the past, let's say, it represents something like between 5 and 10% here, typically. And in the future, let's say that we will be probably at a level of not 30, but I would say a minimum of 25 and 40, something like this. Of course, we have also a lot of demonstration that the daylight can have some very nice demonstration to enhance the design of old, so more recent building. So the key question is how to bring this natural light inside, knowing that it is a need for the human being. It is also a way to have better well-being, I would say, at work or in hospital or this kind of thing. And as it is also something which is which can be interesting in terms of architectural enhance in the building. And the key issue is to be sure that the good level of light is obtained with a good level of comfort, because too much daylight can also be, I would say, unproductive. Too much, I would say, sunlight can increase the temperature of the inside building, and some direct light exposure can bring you some, I would say, glare effect. So this is the way you will design the building is also very important. You need a good level of daylight, but you need to manage the overheating, and you need to manage the glare you can have due to this too high level of daylight. So I don't think there is any question. Let me know if you have some. If not, I will go straightforward in the basic principle of daylighting. Okay, I move further. So the first basic principle is to understand what the sun is bringing and what do we use on the surface of the Earth, let's say. So on the left side here, you have exactly what came from the sun on the top of the atmosphere. When the sunlight is coming in the atmosphere, you have a part which is reflect, a part which is absorbed and diffused, and another part which is transmit. And this is the way you are defining what we are considered the daylight. There is a part of direct light and a part of diffuse light. If we are looking much more on the definition of the spectra, you can see that there is the light coming from the sun is mainly in the visible and the infrared part of the spectra. The infrared part is more or less what we call and what bring the thermal effect, meaning the feel of heating and overheating you can have in the building. And the visible part is what you typically see, and this is why you are able to see all everything which is around you. Okay. There is also a small part of UV. This part of UV starting at, I would say, 180 and coming until 400 nanometer is a part which is also very important in the well-being today and the management of melatonin, serotonin. I don't think we will speak a lot about that, but this is a part which is important for the well-being and the indirect effect of the natural light on the well-being of the human. So, coming back on what I defined before, you have a different source of daylighting in the building. Typically, what you see at the end is what is here on the right back here, okay? And this can be decomposed in 4 parts. The first part, which is the direct light, so typically it is the direct light coming from the sun, which is reflected on the wall. You have the indirect part of the sun, which is mainly coming from the sun, but it is not something which is directly reflected on the wall. And you have what is coming from the diffuse. So what I'm calling here the sun is what is coming on the direct definition I said before. And what is coming from the sky is what is coming from the diffuse light. Okay, so you have what is, I'm coming back because it is not very clear, I think. The left part is what is coming from the direct light coming in the atmosphere. You have the direct light coming on the wall, and you have the direct light which is reflecting everywhere outside, and then after that, which is reflecting after that on the wall, okay? And after that, what is defined as sky is what is coming from the diffuse light in the atmosphere. So you have the diffuse light which is coming directly through the window, and you have the diffuse light which is also coming, which is, I would say, reflected outside, and then after that giving this light, additional light inside the building. So this is exactly what I said. It's another way to see it, but you have light. You have more or less what is the direct light, the diffuse light, and after that, in the direct light, you have the direct sunlight. So this is typically this one. Okay, this is this one. The indirect sunlight is what is coming from the sun. It is this one, which is reflected on the ground, and then after that coming inside. You have after that the direct skylight, and the direct skylight is coming on a part directly through the window, and on another part you have a direct indirect skylight which is reflected as well. So you can see that in the daylight you have more or less four types of I would say contribution from the initial daylight. So now, how do we measure it? You have so sorry, the slide is not well defined. The light is defined as some, I would say, measurement values. So the lux are something which is very well known. It is the amount of light coming from one single source, and it can be defined by lux, which is more or less the number of lum per square meter. After that, you have what we call the luminance, which is defined by candela per square meter, and it is something which measures more or less how bright is the surface when we see it. So typically, of course, a bulb is defined by his luminance, but a surface can be also defined by his luminance when, for example, the sun is directly coming on. I move further. Oh, sorry. So just to fix some ideas, and with this different level, so this is the level of flux you have with the direct sunlight. You have the moonlight, which is the lower, I would say, and a sky which is pretty cloudy, but I would say pretty light during the day, is, let's say, 10 times lower in terms of flux compared to the direct sunlight. In terms of candela, so the sunlight represents 1 billion of candela per square meter. What example can I give you? So a blue sky without considering the sun is only 5,000, and a white paper exposed to 500 lux represents 100 candela. So you have an example of the different light source by definition of lumen by candela. Of course, you can have different kind of perception depending of the surround in terms of color. Typically, here you have an example where the central square here have the same color. And I'm sure that when you see it, even if the screen is not at a good definition, I'm sure that you see this one more darker, the left one more darker than the right one. But due to this surrounding square, your eyes feel that the central square is more darker than another one. So typically this one is darker than the right one. So this is also something very important to take in account, and this is due mainly to the level of light can be reflected or not, and the contrast you can have between two different kind of color inside the building. So just to summarize, we have typically a lot of factors which are impacting the daylighting inside the building. So of course the first one is the climate condition. So the climate condition is first, if you have a clear sky or a cloudy sky, it is defining more or less the level of diffuse light you will have. And of course, as I said before, this define more or less, this have an impact of the different component of the daylight you can have. Depending also on the season, the sun position can change a lot. Typically, during summer, the sun is very high in the sky. This is typically what is here. And during the winter, the sun is much more lower. And in this case, you can have a more important penetration inside the building, and you also can have some glare disease due to this exposition. Like this, the direct sunlight coming inside will be limited, and it will be also limited in terms of how far you will go inside the room. Of course, the building orientation is important, knowing that the sun will make a circle around the building. So the east, west, north, south orientation will define also the level of daylight you have inside a room which is exposed with a window exposed to a different orientation. The external environment define a lot also the daylight. I would say that typically you can see on this picture that the top of the building have a good daylight exposition. I would say the bottom of the building is less exposed to the light. All the surrounding vegetation can define also or can degrade the level of daylight you can have. On the opposite, if you are in a very, I would say, white surrounding, I would say, building like snow, but also near the sea, you will have a lot of indirect light coming inside the building. And the way you will define the different, I would say, shading levels in the building will define also the level of daylight and how you can manage the light coming as direct penetration inside the building. The size and I would say the size and distribution of the opening define a lot how the sun will come inside the building. So of course, the larger is the window, the more you will have both diffuse, direct and indirect light coming inside. And as I said before, if you have a white surface, you will have more reflection, more candlelight will be a source with more candela typically, and by this you can more exploit typically the direct reflection of the sun coming inside. Typically here you have a direct reflection coming from outside. And of course at the end you have how the occupants are managing their blinds. So typically we very often that occupant that have some glare effect during the morning, for example, are just putting the blind down, but in the day they do not putting up, and after that the blind stay closed all the day, and sometimes people are just using the artificial light, and this is not exactly the good behavior we could have. So the glare, this is something I told you a lot before. It depends also a lot of different kind of parameter. I would say the direct sun exposure gives you a glare effect. Some important, I would say, glare can be obtained if you have a lot of very important contrast, meaning you have a very dark part in the room and just near a window, so you feel very uncomfortable with this kind of thing. So this is what can be defined. Keep in mind you have direct sun exposure and you have, I would say, too higher contrast inside the building due to high level of light in one part of the building and I would say dark part. So how can we characterize the daylight performance? Can I move further? Do you have any question? Or Gabriel, should I wait for the end of the presentation to make answer if there is any question?
Same thing for me as the students would like to. So guys, do you have any questions for Valentin for the moment? Guys, any questions? So I think, Emmanuel, you can go further, and we will see in the end.
Okay, let's move further. So the daylight, in terms of measurement, we have more and more regulation and standard which are now integrating the daylight. So typically I show here all the existing, I would say, eco label, BREEAM, DGNB. There is another one I just forgot, but there is at least 4. And typically, in this kind of eco-label, the daylight is defined most of the time by a certain level of flux or on a surface inside the building. So my message here, I will not go further. What is the level in BREEAM? What is the level in DGNE? This is not the question. The question is just to let you that you keep in mind that all the green label buildings are now integrating the level of daylight in their request. The second point is that BREEAM will not have the same request for DGNB. So this is also to tell you that it is something which is starting, and we can see, as it is put here in this sense, we cannot say that the real consensus of the good level of daylight inside the building. But in any case, it is something that everybody start to integrate and consider as an important fact to make now, today, a good building. So as I said before, mainly the recommendation are of certain level of illuminance, so in terms of flux, and it is defined by different kind of buildings. So I know, for example, that in office, so it is for the eco label which are defined before, you have a certain level of flux. Typically, it is 500 lux. In residential, it is a little bit lower. There is also some important part on the contrast you can have inside the building. So this is important to avoid as much as possible the glare I defined before. So this is the level of offices. This is the level of residential. I would say recommended value we have today. But this is something which is still in evolution. I don't have the very last level today or on each eco label, but I'm sure you can see, and you will see that this level of illuminance are more and more included inside this label. So another type of definition, which is for it is not for an eco label, it is for another, I would say, publication. But typically, you distinguish different kind of building application, I would say. So for office, most of the time, you have something which is sometimes higher, classroom as well. Hospital, it is not at the same level, it is a little bit, I would say, lower, except in operating room, but I don't think there is very often a window in an operating room. And some other level for manufacturing. You don't have the level for the residential here, which is a little bit lower. So I think this is here, if I remember. No, this is the level of here you have the level of luminance, and you have, I told you before, what we define in terms of contrast and therefore the glare management. So this is also something you can see here and here. So what are today the metrics? So I explained I would say some kind of static, I would say, measurement of the light. But after that, you can have also, I would say, measurement in terms of how you are inside the room and how you you can manage, you can be autonomous in terms of artificial light. So the first metrics doing this is what we call the daylight factor. The daylight factor is defined as it is said here. It is exactly the definition. It is the ratio of the amount of indoor illuminance at a point on a work plane with the outdoor illuminance under overcast condition. So there is recommended inside, one more time, BRIAM and HQ, I would say HQ Ecolabel. It's very easy to calculate, but today there is a limit. It is a little not representative on the climate you have and on the orientation. That means that this kind of daylight factor is only defined by the building geometry, meaning that this building you will have a daylight factor which will be more or less the same for south and north and whatever you have in Scandinavia or you are in Spain, which is not exactly representative. So there is other, I would say, metrics, which is the daylight factor. In this case, it takes in account where you are, it takes in account the orientation, but there is also some limits because no, it is still the daylight factor. Sorry, I thought with daylight, it is not the good one. It is a demonstration that, let me see, I don't remember this slide, I did it some time ago, sorry for that. So yes, you can see the limits I described before. So this is for Paris. At the same time of hour, this is some kind of simulation we are able to do now internally in R&D, and you can see that you have the daylight factor of 2% in north and a daylight factor of 2% in south, and you can see that inside the room the comfort, I would say the visual comfort you can obtain is not exactly the same, and it shows that but whatever, according to this level of 2% in daylight factor, you should be okay. But you can see that there is a difference between the two rooms. So this is what I want to show you. Another metrics can be the daylight autonomy, and the daylight autonomy is so I will try to summarize it a little bit more. It is a ratio of time where you reach a certain level of luminance just by daylight. So that means you consider both the artificial light and the daylight, the natural light, and you consider that in a certain position in the room, you are able to avoid the use of artificial light during 40 to 60% of the whole day. The main advantage here is that this way to measure the daylight is taking in account the climate in the orientation, and it's also it's able to take in account the seasonality, for example, and also the real weather you have outside. So it's some kind of, I would say, dynamic, I would say, metric, and also more representative on the exact location and orientation of the building. So an example, you have a daylight factor varying a lot depending on the latitude. And in this case, you will have a daylight autonomy, a daylight autonomy which will vary a lot. And you will have a daylight factor which is at 2%, find a daylight factor at 2% for each kind of, I would say, latitude. In terms of orientation, I show you exactly the example of Paris before with the 2% and the effect on the room aspect. And the south, so you distinguish on the picture before that there was a difference between south and north, but in any case, the daylight factor was at 2%. And if you consider the daylight autonomy, you see that the daylight autonomy gives you a big difference. You have a 33 to 55% of daylight autonomy in this south-north exposition for Paris. So what we're considering today in the, I would say, multi-comfort Saint-Gobain approach is typically the daylight autonomy because we think it is more representative. We are able to calculate it for a given climate. We fix for, I would say, residential application an illuminance level of 300 lux, and the daylight autonomy we are targeting in this multi-comfort house is typically above 60%, meaning that we are targeting very high level of, I would say, visual and daylight comfort. Concerning the glare, I think it is much more complex because it is very depending of a lot of, I would say, a lot of factors. And most of these factors are, except maybe the absolute luminance, most of these factors are very difficult to, I would say, to measure as a reliable way. Typically, the contrast is, as I said before, is very dependent how the room is made. If you have a dark part in the room, it's very difficult to manage. The more easy to manage is obviously the direct light exposition, but all the rest of metrics is very difficult to manage. So my message here is to say it is still under definition, and the calculation and measurement are still under definition as well. So this is some kind of, I would say, summary. We are talking here about visual comfort. The visual comfort is very defined first, I would say, by the daylight availability. This is what I said. The way the daylight is distributed inside the room define more or less the contrast and also the level of daylight autonomy. Also, you can have inside the building. Once you have managed this as a good level, you don't have to forget the glare. And now, if you consider the part of the light spectrum, the connection to outside view, you are much more on the problematics of physiological factor. Just at the beginning of the presentation, I told you about the circadian cycle, which is kind of, I would say, physiological impact on the human, but there is indirect physiological factor that can affect also the health of the people which are living inside. And typically, the connection to the outside is important, and the light spectrum is also important. This is what I started to explain you before about the UV light and the way you can generate I would say serotonin or melatonin to have a better well-being of the human. So this is something which is also very preliminary. and think, I'm not sure I will come back on this, but keep in mind the daylight distribution, the daylight availability, and the glare are more or less the direct way to manage the visual comfort. And the connection to the outside view and the light spectrum management is something which is also under definition to manage the indirect impact on the human. So how can we, I showed you before a lot of nice picture on the south-north exposition in Paris, for example. And there exists a lot of software which are able to make representative view, but also to make calculation in terms of lux in different area of the room. So these are these software are more and more popular now, and you can make a calculation of the exact distribution. Here you can see you can make a calculation of the exact distribution level of the level of natural light inside the room. So now the last question, how can we design better building to have better in terms of I would say visual or daylight comfort? So there is a lot of things, but I think I already told you a lot of criteria before. The building orientation is important. The size, the dimension of the opening, the distribution of the opening near the wall is important. The way you are managing the layout of the interiors is also important. Sometimes it's nice to have transparent partition. The way to have, the way to manage the surface of the wall inside can manage a lot the level of daylight, and you can manage some glare inside. And I would say the way you are able to redirect, so this is linked to this room surface, but there is also some other way. The way you are able to redirect and to distribute one more time the natural light inside the building is very important to obtain. I would say, to define your daylighting strategy. So, for example, thanks to the different simulation tools we have today, here you have an example of the impact of the door area. So here you have 75% of window area on a wall, a whole wall here. You see what does it look like? You have the level of candela per meter, which is demonstrated here. So you can see that you are at the level of, I would say, near the window. You are, I would say, this area. If I'm not wrong, you are between. You are not so far for 200 candela here, for example. And after that, when you are more close to this part of the room, you are much more lower than 50 candela. So this is what wood looks like inside the building. If you are decreasing this window area, no, I don't have this. Sorry, I'm sure I have. Oh, it is surprising. No, it's not the. Okay, I will manage it in any case. Okay. So this is a way to show you how the size, the window area can impact. In terms of window placement, so here you have, depending on the orientation, different windows which are placed here, and the level of floor which is above 300 lux is 33% here due to this window placement, I would say, in the whole room. So you see that there is a part which is very dark on the middle here, And of course, there is a part which is very lighty here, I would say. Another example where you have here, due to the window placement, 40% which are above 300 lux. So typically this is this part, I think it is much more in this area. Now if you have a very large room or very depth room, in this case you decrease a lot, and the floor area, which is about 300 is only 30%. So if I go back here, you have here with this very large window, you have at 95%, which is above 300, okay? Now, if you change more or less the placement of the window, you can be very low, and it is only 33% of level of light above 300. Here, you are at 40%. And here, if you are very depth on the whole room, of course, you are very low in terms of daylight due to the larger of the room. The use of internal partition can also aid a lot here, in part, the way you can let the sun inside, coming inside. And I think that's it. I'm more or less finished. The annex is something I will use if there is any question. So I think I finished the question. If you have any question, do not hesitate.
So, Guy, let's use the time and ask some question so that you are clear more about the expectations. Let's say. Any questions? Okay, so I think that for this question I will show you a presentation which is also done by our colleagues. I have a presentation for them, simulation, and they were kind enough to do this for us. Basically, what they did is a simulation of a room, which you can see here, which is 5 by 5 by 2.5 meters high, and this is based in Brest, so basically in our location. Again, many thanks to the colleagues for doing this, and they have taken into account some standard evaluation, let's say. So first of all, the facade is towards south. Now, the second point that you should take into account is the ratio of the window. So basically, there is a frame to glass ratio of about 30%. That being how much the frame represents from the surface of the frame represent from the total surface of the windows, which depending on the case or depending on the different situation you have, you can select windows with higher or with lower percentage of the frame. Last but not least, you can see that the ground reflection is quite small. It's a 0.1, so it's close to the reality. You don't have white ground, and this is reflected in this low reflection coefficient, as well as quite okay in terms of reflection facade. So this facade is not very dark. Now, the colleagues have been making several simulations. So the models are with window to floor area of 13%, of 15%, of 17%, 19%, and 21%. I'm not going to show you all the simulations, but I have selected this one just to give you a feeling, an idea of how you could design. So if we are speaking about our location, which is in Brest-in Belarus, and we are taking into account this kind of orient towards south, if you have a window to floor area of about 19, let's say 20%, and also we will have a window with a good transmission loss of about 60 to 70%, then it's most likely that you are going to reach as target, or you are going to be towards the target of 60% daylight autonomy. So this is to give you a figure and a feeling. I will come back in a second also to the question about the living room. Now, this is also how it would look if you succeed or you do not succeed. These are your simulation. And for example, here on the left side, you can see a daylight autonomy of about 65% and how it looks. Of course, as already presented in the presentation earlier by Valentin, you will not have the same quality of light everywhere. So the quality of light will downgrade going towards the end of the room, but as an average you will have 65%. And on the right side you can see a room which is not good at all, which in terms of daylight autonomy it's quite poor, only 15%, and you can see that there is not good enough lighting. Now coming back to the question of living room, depending of course on the different selections that you would make, I would say that you would go around 5% deep in case of a 20-25% window to floor area ratio, and that would ensure you on the south facade under an average condition, that would ensure you a good daylight autonomy. Valentin, what do you think?
I think what you said is true. I would say the depth, of course, it depends a lot, I would say, on the size of the window. The size of the window will define more or less the depth you can have, and this is what we show on the slide before. If I go back here, I don't think we have the exact size of the room, but in this case you have typically 55% of window area is very huge. It's standard, I would say, for office application. For residential, I think you are much more at a level of I would say 20-25%, and it is already very. And in this case, the depth of the room will be degrade a lot, and I would say we should be much more in this area. And the depth, you can consider that I would say the depth will be around with this kind of window. You will be probably at 3 to 4 meters, but it will be the maximum. A 3 meter room is very big, and you will have a very bad daylight if you are in a room too depth. So this is more or less what I can say. Gabriel, if you can come back on the slide you just show before.
Yes, right away. Here you go.
Just the slide before this one. Yes, so here this is something I did not develop a lot, but I would say an important parameter as far as the window become very large. You have to manage. So as I said, if the window is large, more or less, the of glaze area is large, typically more than 70%. Your daylight will be very good in the window, except in the room, except if you have a very depth room, more than 5 meters, but it is a very depth room, I would say. But in this case, the larger the window will be, the higher the risk of overheating will come. And in this case, you can see that here you have different glass products. I will not describe all, but you can see that typically the products here, and here, more important, these the two right one, are showing a very low solar factor. And in this case, you are able to combine with not so bad, I would say, daylight autonomy, but you are able to decrease as much as possible. You are managing the infrared part of the spectra which is coming inside. So that means that you are able to keep a good level of daylight, but together you are able to keep, I would say, the heat outside. So this is something which is important today in the window we are developing. There is some possibility. On one side, for example, this one will be much more designed for, I would say, very cold climate, where we need to have a lot of heating coming inside during the winter. And in this case, you have together a good level of daylight autonomy and also a good level of, I would say, solar gain. And for example, this one or this one, but much more this one, I would say the orange one and the blue one here, are very useful for south climate or hot climate, where you want to have a good level of daylight, but also you want to keep the heat outside. So this is also a way to show you how we can manage by the glass to have a good level of daylight, but to not degrade, I would say, the overheating we can have due to the sun. Okay?
Yeah, quite important. And in the designer, you can also simulate this overheating. And we hope that by the end of this year, we'll also have an integrated simulation of daylight, at least as an indication like this one is here. But this is for you as a general idea to know how to have a feeling. It's not gonna happen that somebody will search with a magnifier if you are exactly at 59.5% daylight autonomy, or at 15.3 kilowatt hour per square meter in year, or I don't know, at 52 decibels instead of 51. The targets, the values are put there to help you in the way you design and in the way you think about your design. There are targets. It is still a contest of concept and of idea. Of course, if you are going to choose, and as already explained earlier by Valentin, if you are going to choose in a south climate a product or a window which has a huge solar factor, a solar or huge G, which could be, let's say, 65%, and you do not take care at all of shadings, this is a mistake in the design itself, because you didn't look at it on a holistic way. You say, okay, I would like to have I am on the south, I want to have very big windows, I want to have very big solar gains, and I didn't put any shadings. And as a result, if you put also all the windows, for example, on the south, what will happen? It will happen that the room, the persons which are going to live there will experience 30, 32, 35 degrees, which is not nice. So again, all the presentation about the thermal, about the daylight, the ones that are going to come about acoustics and interior acoustic treatment, sound insulation, interior acoustic treatment, as well as the one about designer, are all thought together in a way to allow you to have a clear view of your design. So, any other questions? So all the presentation will be available, and already some of them are uploaded it as we are discussing on the website of the student contest under 2016 edition. Nevertheless, if you go on YouTube and you search for Isover online trainings, you will also find them very easy. So, any other question, guys? Okay, so first of all, thank you, Valentin, for everything. Great having you back and being able to take the time to speak a little bit with the students. We will continue the online trainings. The next one will be announced shortly. Either it will be hosted either at the end of this week, either at the beginning of the next week, as well as the next, the second one, which is scheduled for 24th of February. So we will announce this to all of you which are recorded, registered online. This being said, I have give you another 2-3 minutes if you have any other questions. If not, I will thank you for your participation. Looking forward to see you at the next one, and keep an eye on the email, as there will be an email with an announcement soon. So 2 more minutes for questions, and if not, we will end up this online training session for today.
Okay, thank you, Gabriel.
Thank you so much, Valentin. See you soon. Thank you, guys. See you for the next training. Ilian, thank you for the technical support. We can close down the session now. Take care and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.